Welcome to the Island Connection. I'm very excited right now. We got a young guy, a younger guy, younger than me, in fact, I would say, but a young, bright mind. I mean, I've known Trey for a long, long time. He came out of Kauai, where my family's at right now, and ended up at Western Oregon. And if you guys know anything about the GNAC, it's a tough league. I played my ball at Central Washington. He played his ball, at Western Oregon. And a lot of guys come off the rock and actually end up in that GNAC and then start coaching from there. But it's exciting to see Trey's pass and his step onto the field and how he's grown in these last few years. Even, when I was back at Eastern Washington, he used to call me up and come up and, try to learn as much as he possibly can back there. And it's exciting to see that he's starting to get noticed about all these type of stuff. And now he's moving on to, now you're at Willamette right now,
Yep.
offensive coordinator, taking the reins there and doing this thing there. So I'm excited to hear this, putting it on the floor. Go ahead, Trey.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. We're gonna get rolling. Just real quick, obviously, Cherokee said, born and raised on Kauai. That's why I'm excited to be here with Cherokee. I've looked at him as a mentor, throughout this coaching career. Obviously, he's coaching big time Big Sky football right now. So it's exciting for me to be here. We're going to talk about quarterback mechanics and how to maximize arm strength and accuracy. For us, whether it's a D2 or D3 level, a lot of guys in the recruiting world will just kind of recruit the frame and the length and a lot of times it's the athletic ability, right? Like we recruit the best athlete we can at that position, and then we kind of take the approach that they'll have the ability to adapt to our style of coaching and our mechanics. And that's kind of our outlook on it. This is a little throw chart is what we call it, route chart. So what I did, being kind of in charge of the offense here, we went out and took my golf rangefinder. Obviously, I know there's some type of equation you can use. That's way above my head. So we did all the throws. We charted all the throws that we're going to ask them to make based on our install through spring ball and kind of, put it down on paper. So field hitch, a 6-yard field hitch right here is a 27-yard throw. And to me, this was the biggest difference. The 12-yard field hook, only difference between the hitch and the hook, obviously the yardage and the depth, but for us, it's that 12-yard hook is caught 2 to 4 yards inside the numbers, and all of a sudden you realize it's a 1-yard difference in the throw. So for our guys, I think it was an eye opener. A lot of times depth perception or perception of the environment can affect the mechanics. It affects tension, and this is why the best corner usually plays in the boundary right here. You got your easier throws to the boundary without question in terms of bang for your buck. So our guys, I think the biggest deal was we understood now that throwing that field fade at 30 yards, you know what I mean, maybe for some of our guys isn't realistic on a consistent basis, especially a little bit off platform. You know what I mean? So again, some guys can make those throws and some guys can't. So we have to kind of understand what routes we can't do, and fit our offense around that. I'm not going to get too much into some coordinating things here, but I'm a big believer. We always say do what your players can do and whatnot. So this is one way of doing that. We're throwing routes that they're comfortable of throwing. So this is right here, kind of our bread and butter. Obviously the field bub, but we kind of live. Sorry, right here. We kind of live right here. And for us, obviously, when we warm up, that now affects how we warm up. So, when quarterbacks warm up at most, maybe they get back to 20 yards, maybe 15, 20 yards. All right, they're in whatever, routes on air, Indy. When majority of their throws are 25 yards plus, they've never warmed up at that yardage. So we're expecting them to do something they've never done and whatnot. Now, for us, it's pretty simple. All right. This is our overview. And I believe, again, there's no one right way to do it. I've been a part of Coach Vinny Passes at St. Louis, who's now in Las Vegas, I believe. He got back working with Marcus a little bit. But, Coach Vinny has had major success, from the Higgins brothers to Marcus, to, even Timmy Chang, Darnell Arsenal, all the Hawaii kind of OGs at that position, that kind of set the standard. Um, I got, a bunch from him, and he was a little bit different. He was more vertical, believed in standing a little bit more upright, believed in supinating the right hand, which is essentially just turning the right hand in relation to the elbow. And I got a chance to work with Steve Clarkson down there in Pasadena when I got to college. I was running into some arm problems, elbow problems, which usually shouldn't happen when throwing the football if done properly. So I went and saw Steve Clarkson, and he made me a more efficient thrower, increased velocity, and decreased the strain on my shoulder. And I thought that was genius, and took some things from him. And then over the years, we started to realize, talking to different people and things that aren't necessarily in college coaching, but have an impact on quarterbacks. And I'm not talking about the quote unquote quarterback gurus. I think what they do is awesome, especially for us in the offseason. I think they have the opportunity to truly impact, your quarterback and their level of play. I'm talking more so of the biomechanics side of things. There's a couple guys, the QB docs is one. I think they're out in Indiana. I think they do a really good job with some band work and range of motion stuff that essentially help you gain speed. At the end of the day, when every quarterback on our roster, coach, I know every quarterback on your roster, there's a chance that their body structure, from a body structure standpoint, they're all different. So it's hard for a coach to treat everybody the same from just a body movement standpoint. So everybody will vary at some level, right? You have the Russell Wilsons of the world, the Kyler Murrays of the world, right? And then you have the Josh Allens of the world, right? So everybody, varies in terms of their body structure. So stride separation obviously will vary. Release angle will vary. No doubt about it. I think the biggest thing is the sequencing. We'll talk about that quite a bit, but the sequencing is when everything happens, and everybody's the same. Everybody's the same. So how the ball gets thrown after stride and separation, everybody should be the same, if they're high level throwers. We break down mechanics into 4 phases, and I think the reason for that is to, I believe in installing it like a play. And achieving mastery of skill, and which allows our quarterbacks to hammer it out in the off season, when we're not allowed to be there. We talk about creating accurate velocity all the time, and then we're going to get into some common issues, and we're going to get into some tape, which will address those common issues. And going forward, we got sequencing. So right here we got hips, spine, shoulders, and then your elbow and hand is kind of the order. Again, it moves in. I don't want to spend too long on this, because it'll pop on tape. Again, stride and separation varies. So everyone will say your stride should be this distance, it should be that distance. Everybody's different. So, I'm not too concerned about how they stride and separate, other than the actual angle of the foot itself. We'll talk about that later, but it should be a 45-degree step, meaning your left foot, whether it's at the target, slightly outside, no matter what, it's at 45 degrees to create a firm front side. And again, you guys will understand the importance of that a little bit later here. So again, when we talk about sequencing, it's the order in which your body moves to maximize accuracy and velocity. People will use, the kinetic chain or kinetic sequencing. Just for our guys' simplicity, we just call it sequencing. Okay, and then now again, when we talk about sequencing and the 4 phases, this is kind of how we talk about it right here. Okay, this is actually our local kid from Hawaii Prep, Seth Beach. Teach Tape Beach is his name, man. This guy's as good as they come, man. And we got to get him stronger and whatnot. But we got neutral, and we call this neutral pre-pass position right here. Now, everybody again is different. Couple things we'll get into a little bit later, but we got relaxed elbows. You know what I mean? We got a grip that's the hand is spread out, which I'm learning that I never really used to coach grip, because again, everybody's about comfortability, but the one kind of precursor or non-negotiable is the width between your fingers. So we want to create leverage on the football. We got to spread out our fingers as much as we can. Now we'll talk about toes later, but these are good toes right here, parallel toes. And the left arm is maybe the most important aspects of this throwing motion. The load phase, again, stride and separation is also called the load phase here. And then once we enter acceleration phase, all acceleration phase means is when the elbow starts to climb or quote unquote accelerate to the point of reception. That's all we're talking about there. And then the finish where everything's aligned, right? We create some disassociation with our bottom half moving this way and our top half moving that way in the load phase. But at deceleration or at finish, everything's aligned. And then this is just the other angle of it. Again, my guy Teach Tate Beach right here. Very good toes, parallel toes in the neutral position. The stride foot, you can see right here, enters the ground 45 degrees. That's crucial in terms of what it does to the front hip. And then again, it allows the knee to be stacked at release point. All right, not before, but at release point. If the knee gets stacked on that foot before release point, the left hip is finished too early in the throw. Right. So what you hear quarterback coaches all the time tell you, your guys that, hey, your left hip is out of the throw, or the left hip is opening up too soon. That's what they're talking about. Essentially, at the end of the day, this right hip rotates into the left hip, creating an abrupt stop, which creates the whip in the throwing motion. All right, again, phase one, kind of just more in depth here, right? We talk about the feet under the armpits. That's just kind of a standard guideline. I'm starting to find that our guys probably stand a little bit too vertical. It's the one, non-athletic position in terms of stance on the football field, right? DBs have leverage. They have good pad level, so do safeties. Their posture is an athletic posture that allows them to be explosive. Well, so for us, we're trying to mimic that a little bit. I'm trying to play a little bit lower, a little bit firmer, a little bit stronger and connected to the ground. Again, everybody's different. There's no one right way. I don't want to get into it with the Twitter warriors, but you know what I mean? That's just my beliefs. We talk about relaxing the elbows, and it's just, again, figure of speech, really. It's hard to relax a bone, but this is what we talk about when we talk about relaxing elbows, all right? We're talking about the trap and the bicep. So when I say relax the elbows, a lot of guys, you'll see they look like they're talking on their phone when their elbows are pointed up like this. That creates a ton of tension in the trap. And again, at the bottom of the screen here, we can see tension is the enemy of speed, man. And speed is velocity, right? When we talk about speed, it's hand speed. Like that whip, the external rotation in the off arm, that's all we're talking about. And we're trying to decrease tension while we are in neutral. Again, neutral toes, we talk about being parallel to each other. A lot of guys, this is a tough position for them. Whether you're squatting, power cleaning, hang snatching, I don't care what it is, bench pressing in the weight room, anytime you need to use ground force to get or move anything, your toes are naturally duck-footed. Naturally. Knees are stuck on the toes, and you're naturally duck-footed, which is okay. If you're playing hoops, you got to go guard somebody. When you move laterally, you are duck-footed. So I understand that it's a tough movement for quarterbacks. But again, we're rotational athletes, right? So we have to be able and give our or give our right hip a chance to rotate. And it starts from the feet. It starts with the toes and their position. Okay, so we talk about pigeon toe. Again, this is something where we recruited a kid last year at Western Oregon, and as we saw him throw in person, we realized that he was pigeon toed, and what it did for the motion, what it naturally did for the motion. He didn't even realize it, but it cut out time from the motion. It made it way more efficient, and he was a shorter stroker, but it allowed him to be powerful because of the position of his feet pre-throw. Okay, again, there's a couple of things here. We talk about a slightly open frame. You know what I mean? We take our drop. It's not exactly a back pedal, but traditionally people put the left over the right. In our three-step stuff, we will put the left behind the right. So left foot's forward and left will enter behind the right foot, which allows our left side to see the entirety of the field. And Cherokee understands the importance of quarterback shoulders and body language. And we're not trying to give those DBs any advantage, man, any advantage. So we're trying to see 53 and a third. All right, now we talk about a soft spine. Again, that is a feeling for the quarterback. You know what I mean? All we're trying to do here is install and teach and try to learn feelings so that they can then reinforce some of the things that they're doing, and self-correct. So we talk about a soft spine. When we talk about the spine, just before we move on, we talk about the thoracic spine, right? Which allows the body to rotate. Okay. If there's any flexion or extension or tension in that spine, the rotation is done. It just doesn't exist. Okay, and the only way for that thoracic spine to work the way it should is we need to have, again, good right foot here in terms of, being parallel, which allows the right knee to do what it should to the right hip, and we'll get into that much later. Here we go. So the load phase, again, we're striding and we're separating right here. Everybody's different, depends on body type. All right, now when we talk about the weight, right, we are on the arches of our feet. So we move and we play on our toes. When it's time to be explosive and rotate, we dig our freaking heels into the ground. It's a figure of speech. It's really the arches, but the dip and rip feeling is what we need. I think Brady is maybe the best at it, where he's in the pocket, 2 feet, kind of tempoed, and then when it's time to throw, he sinks into the heels and lets it rip. That is the only way to be as powerful as you need to be. You'll never back squat. You'll never pitch from the balls of your feet. Right? That's a little bit old school in terms of pitching mechanics, but nowadays everybody, when they pitch, they kick their front leg. It's because it allows that back heel to dig into the ground, right? We talk about some inverted pyramid type stuff, but that's what you're getting at. In order to be explosive in a rotational type movement like this, your weight distribution in your feet is extremely important. Now, our stride step, again, this is just a reference point. Everybody's different. Three by three, so 3 inches at it and 3 inches just outside of it is kind of what we talk about, and it's the middle of our foot getting in the ground, right? We try to avoid the heel striking first or the toe striking first. Again, it's that to me has more effect on shoulder plane, right? So if my shoulder plane tilts to throw deep ball, this left leg literally gets further from the ground because my shoulders tilt, right? The left leg gets shorter than the right. So at some point, the toe will strike first. That's natural. I understand that, and that's okay. Okay, now we talked about the stride foot being at 45. You can see it here. Stride foot's in the ground. The foot position's at 45 degrees. I'm a firm believer in that. And the reason why is it because it keeps the left knee, again, inside of the left foot, all right? But it also allows the left shoulder to stay on top or inside the left knee as long as possible, which then results in velocity, right? We talk about delaying the right side. For pitchers, if you watch pitchers, baseball pitchers throw from flat ground, all right, when they kick, they have natural shoulder tilt. All that does, when they have natural shoulder tilt, all that does is, quote unquote, delay the right side, right? So now they're doing is loading up that right ass cheek and loading up the right foot, not the balls of the feet, the whole foot, all right, to now drive and rotate towards the target. Okay, and then in terms of the upper body, again, everybody's a little bit different here, but I like palms facing the ground, and the left arm will tell the right arm what to do, right? So if people are having arm slot issues, whether you're Timmy Chang or Colt Brennan, right, which I still to this day believe the 2 best to ever do it, right, their off arm will match their release point. Okay, so if Colt Brennan's a sidearm guy, he's efficient, gets the ball out quick, well, the off arm has to allow him to do that, right? So that it has to match his throwing arm. If you watch Stafford, Rogers, Brady, anybody like that, guys who can change their arm angles, their off arm tells them or tells their right arm what to do. Okay, so as we get into accelerate, sorry, that was a little quick right there. As we get into acceleration phase, right now the stride and separation is obviously done, right? The elbow in acceleration phase starts to drive to the point of reception. Now the right kneecap will start to rotate towards the target, right? Not extend, but rotate towards the target. Again, stride foot's at 45, the knee slightly inside. You can see it better at this angle, slightly inside that left foot. It's not stacked on that left foot. And again, hey, we got somebody coming in the waiting room. But anyway, so again, the off arm crucial here, right? Off arm's 45, front foot's 45. Again, you guys see in the next couple slides how that off arm impacts the throwing motion. Okay, this right here, when we talk about abrupt stop, this is it right here. That's the importance of it. The offside, the left side, in this case, the off arm side, or whatever you want to call it. Again, this is the greatest of all time right here. Now, this is something that, to me, I think I got to move this real quick. Again, obviously not everybody's Brady, and he's got some attributes that allow him to be good. From his mom and dad, right? That are just genetic. The long arms, the frame, naturally a little knock knee, naturally a little bit pigeon toed. Now, stride foot's at 45. The front knee, again, not stacked on that left foot. I will show you what stack looks like from our guys here in a second. All right, now that right kneecap moving towards the point of reception, and then the back foot, which I think this is the hardest part to coach. All right, because it's very hard to control. All right, but the weight goes from the arch of the foot and it rotates onto the big toe while everything is moving to the point of reception. This is really hard to do. Obviously, he does it naturally. Okay. Now what you see here is some creases in his jersey, which tells you that he is separating his lower body, moving that direction, and his upper body loading in that direction. Right? The load phase has ended. We're entering acceleration phase, and he's still providing some disassociation. Off arm at 45 degrees, inside the off knee. All these things are checkpoints when you're watching it in real time. It's bigger, some gross movement type things, some gross motor movements that you can judge on the spot, and you don't necessarily need it filmed, right? Other movements in the throwing motion, 100%, no doubt, you need it filmed in order to critique it. The one thing I think moving forward, and I don't want to miss on this now, but moving forward, I think the one thing we and I do this too, I'm guilty of it, is we try to make corrections based on results of the football, right? Whether it wobbles or whether you lose it right or whether you lose it left or whatever it may be, that is irrelevant because all you're doing is coaching kids on how to get feedback from a result, right? So essentially, I'm a hypocrite at times. We detach from outcomes, especially when you're trying to rebuild and turn around a program. You got to detach from some of these outcomes. And so, again, I'm guilty of it, but we have to. So a lot of my filming, you'll see here in a second, a lot of my filming doesn't have the ball in it. So it doesn't have the result of the throw. When we talk about the rep with our guys, the first question is, how did it feel? Take yourself back to the rep. Tell me what it felt like. All right, you talk through it, and then you tell me where the ball went based on how it felt coming out of your hand. And as they get better, obviously those conversations are more in depth. But that's kind of, in terms of style of coaching, that's kind of where we start. Now, deceleration. Okay, this is maybe, I know I probably said this, a lot, but this is maybe the most important part of this whole presentation. I'm a firm believer in range of motion, stability, band stuff, right? Like the Jaeger bands or Jaeger, whatever whatever people call them, the baseball type bands where you're talking about arm care and arm health. To me, again, the cliche thing is your best ability is availability. No question about it. If my quarterback, who is a guy because he does the right things mechanically, mentally, physically, whatever, if he has arm issues, he is not the guy because he can't throw enough to get us better, right? So we throw 75, 80 balls a day. Let's make sure that we're taking care of our arm. The band stuff is an entirely different presentation. But we talk about the deceleration. And again, this is how we sum it up. You can only accelerate as fast as you can decelerate, right? So in terms of your arm, I don't care how much force you're carrying from the ground. All right, once it gets into that shoulder, you create arm lag. Great. A lot of range of motion, ton of arm lag. But over time, those same muscles that allow you to create that arm lag is the same muscles that are in charge to slow it down after the ball comes out of your hand, right? So there's some things that, in the lower body you can do to ease the stress of that. I think, Dak Prescott ran into some elbow issue or some shoulder issues from some lower body things. But essentially, you're putting a lot more stress on that shoulder, right? And those are the little muscles, the teres minor, teres major, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, all those tiny muscles in the back of the shoulder that connect to the rotator cuff that are in charge of slowing it down, right? Those muscles cannot be neglected. So again, we hammer this stuff. We were a firm believer in you warm up to throw. You don't throw to warm up. I think it creates some longevity. And I think if you want to throw 100 balls 4 days a week, you can. And in order to get better, I think you have to at times. Not all the time, but I think you have to. Okay. So again, deceleration, right? Everything we talk about firm front side a lot. I get that. But I think the biggest thing is it creates the whip, I guess, quote unquote, right? Like in the locker room, you're messing around with your boys. You want to whip them with a towel. If you don't create that abrupt snap in that towel, it ain't gonna hurt, right? So you got to create that abrupt snap, and that's what creates the whip, okay? And that's the same thing in the throwing motion. All right. If you have a soft front side or a knee that's stacked onto the foot, you get some over rotation, and again a four-way miss is created. All right. What we're trying to do with that abrupt and firm front side is create a two-way miss, high and low. If I'm in line like a good shooter, Steph, Clay Thompson, whatever, I miss long and short. I miss high and low. I am on line. That's the thing that we talk about. Okay. And again, here's just kind of a snapshot. I don't know how good of quality these videos or pictures are, but this is kind of a snapshot of our throwing mechanics. And you can tell here again, we talked about that off arm and how it matches the throwing arm and what it does. We can still create that power T right there with the shoulder plane. That's really good. Now at point, everything's aligned, right? The foot's still at a 45, but everything's aligned. Shoulders and hips. Does that make sense? So this is how it should work. And in terms of when you video, that's a really good clip of my guy Teach Tate Beach right here. All right, but this is a really good clip from the front, but also from the side for these guys to understand, hey man, this is what alignment looks like, The ball is getting released in front of the stride foot. And Coach Vinny Passage used to always say, hey man, the secret to throwing a spiral is release the ball past your stride foot. And it makes sense to me. That's the feeling I had anytime I was playing, and that's the feeling our guys have. So, shout out Coach Vinny. I'm stealing that one. But that's kind of, what we talk about. Again, here's the finished product after the ball's out of our hand. This is really, really, really good here. You can see the right hip rotating against the left hip, right? That left leg's firm. Again, when I say firm, it doesn't need to be straightened, right? It's just firm. Okay, so it can be bent and be firm, right? So that's what creates the firmness in the left hip. If that toe gets too pointy at the target, the left hip can now absorb more rotation going left, which creates over rotation. Okay, now we talk about maximizing arm strength and accuracy. Again, there's no doubt that some guys have an innate ability for touch and feel. No question about it. There is work to be put in, but the reason why I say that is because if we could coach touch and accuracy, everybody be Steph Curry. Right? So we got to be able to, maximize what we have, who we recruit. Again, there's no question that you got to recruit the best guys. So in terms of how you coach mechanics, right now I'm coaching this much. Maybe at Sac State you only got to do a little bit of mechanical work to make him more efficient on fourth down throws, right? That's all we're doing, and that's kind of the approach. But before I get going in this, the big thing with this, and I know it's people will look at it and be like, well, I've heard multiple guys, at the AFCA, I think, convention, and we were talking about quarterback mechanics, and I said, how important is it to you? And a lot of guys said, no, it's not. We just recruit it. And I was like, that's great. It's everybody would love to do that, but to me, there's one guy that is truly elite in big time college football, and usually that guy is playing in the national championship game, right? Like you can tell when those guys throw it, they're just different, whether it's velocity or accuracy or whatever, those guys are just more consistent. And that's kind of the standard, kind of like the NFL with Brady, or Rodgers. So when we talk about maximizing arm strength, okay, maximizing your God-given ability, all right, we have to use the ground, okay? Now, in terms of how this energy travels, And you have to, as quarterbacks, we have to kind of visualize this. But if you're 2 feet on the ground, boom, I drive off the ground and I'm using the ground. I got to stay connected to the ground. Cool. Eventually that back foot comes off the ground. But now that force is in your right hip. So if that right leg extends, that force is dead. Again, extension is tension, right? Like I cannot extend some without tension. So once that right leg extends and not rotate, right? Not if it rotates, now it's in the right hip, which carries it through the thoracic spine. All right. Well, once it's in that spine, if I extend or tilt that spine, the rotation's dead, right? So that the force now gets decreased as it climbs through the body. If you can rotate properly with proper range of motion in your spine, then it gets carried into your shoulder. And again, we talked about the decelerators. All right. If you cannot decelerate the speed that you want, your body will never let you do it. Right? You might do it for a throw or two, and then your body will protect itself. That's just how it works. So we got to make sure that our shoulder and the shoulder girdle itself is strong. And obviously, you can improve range of motion and stability and mobility and all that type of stuff. Okay. So we got to use the ground. That's how the energy gets transferred. Again, sequentially, that we talked about it in the first slide, it starts from the ground up, right? So we talk about delaying the right side. And again, this is more coach speak here. But in order to delay the right side, which is the ball arm, your left shoulder, when I talk about it, is all I'm saying is try to keep your left shoulder inside your left knee as long as possible. Now, obviously, deep ball, you can keep it in there a little bit longer than some quick game stuff. I don't know, for the Niner fans, out there, Jimmy G, I know you take some crap, but Jimmy G is maybe one of the most efficient throwers in delaying the right side. He only uses the amount of force that he needs, right? We don't put max force in every throw because that creates more variables, more room for error. That's just the simplicity of it, right? So we only use as much ground force as we need. If we can make the hitch, the hitch by two all arm, we're going to get our feet over there. We just won't stride. And yeah, let's just get it out with all arm, because naturally that's how you are the most accurate, is by eliminating unnecessary movement. Right. So it's the same thing with any position in football. If I'm a DB and I got to, backpedal, turn and run, I need to eliminate movement while staying connected to the ground. Right. Like that's just how this stuff works. So that's kind of my coaching point on it in terms of delaying the right side. When we talk about arm leg, again, we talked about it earlier, but external rotation, okay, in the right arm, you need ROM, stands for range of motion. Obviously, you need range of motion in your shoulder, okay. For anybody that's listening to this, what we ended up doing, obviously, we measured, we had them up on a wall, right? Internal, pause, external, and then we measured it. Now, we also used our athletic trainers. Every athletic trainer should have an FMS screening, functional movement screening, and our band work had to be tangible in that screening. If not, it wasn't worth anything, right? I think tangible improvement is an opportunity for your guys to earn confidence. I can't give them confidence. You have to put them in those situations to earn it, and I think mechanics is one of them. Again, we talked about the abrupt stop all the time. We don't got to go over that again. All right. Accuracy, consistent sequencing. Accuracy in general is about consistency and eliminating unnecessary movements, right? That's all it is. I'm a firm believer. I believe Tom House said this in relation to pitchers, but 1 inch of head level movement, or head movement, sorry, eye level movement, is 2 inches of release point. Now, in baseball, it's different a little bit because it's a fixed distance. I know how far I need to throw it, and I know the location. It's literally, they have parameters for it. For us, 1 inch of head yank at 5 yards probably won't affect the football. But if you're throwing skinny post or field corner or double moves to the field, I promise you 2 inches of release point here, 40 yards down the field is a massive difference. Massive difference. Okay. Now we got to control the shoulder plane, but that just comes from a consistent offside, right? Every time in the motion, that abrupt stop happens at the same time, right? It's right when the release point gets in front of the stride foot, boom, ball's out. The whip's cracked, right? So again, about consistency. I understand that. It's like, oh, coach, how do you measure it? You don't. You film it, right? You film it and put together clips for your players to see their motion over a period of time. And when I say a period of time, when we initially did this program or this approach to quarterback play, it took me 3 years to kind of figure out what worked for our players. And it took our guy um, an entire spring, so spring to spring, an entire year, spring to spring, to truly understand it and start talking in terms of quarterback mechanics. And he started talking in terms of feel, about a year into it. Okay, so yes, it does take some time, no doubt. All right, to recap, again, we talk about velocity. Well, I'm a firm believer in painting clear pictures for our players. So when I say, hey, boys, today we got a couple of drills, we're going to try to throw it and increase our velocity earlier in practice to see how it affects our drills and our performance at the end of practice, right? It's like pitchers throwing bullpen. All right. So we talk about the ability to carry the force from the ground through the release point. So again, that comes in, it's range of motion, right? Stability at range of motion. It's pure strength, honestly, right? And then again, everybody's body type's a little bit different, so you have to kind of tweak things as you go. If you have a pigeon toe guy, a natural pigeon toe guy, I mean, you struck gold. Right? That's like John Elway back in the day. Marino was that way a little bit, where for whatever reason they're naturally pigeon toed, and people wondered why they threw it hard, and that's kind of where this thing started. Accuracy is the ability to eliminate movement while being repeatable. Again, that's just being consistent, right? And eliminating variables is another way to phrase it. But in terms of our players, this is how we talk about it. And again, I'm a firm believer in this. One, it holds you accountable to your drills. Does my drill? Are we practicing eliminating movement? Are we doing things that can be repeatable? Are we teaching things that can be repeatable? So on and so forth. So it holds you accountable as a coach, because if it doesn't apply to this, then why are we doing it? Type thing. Again, just to recap, this is the tight angle of the sequencing. And then again, this is one of the greatest of all time. I take that back. The greatest of all time at doing it, right? So you got your stride. Obviously, you can see the angle of the foot here, 45 degrees. You can see the right foot now and how it rotates onto the big toe and what that does to the right knee, right? I mean, that's as good as it gets, right? Off arm, right arm, right? We talk about sometimes with our guys being 90-90 in terms of elbow, shoulder to ball relationship. It's not going to be perfect all the time. It's just a reference point. Again, at finish, we're 45 degrees. He's got a little bit firmer of a leg. Obviously, it's a little bit straighter. I'm assuming this is a little more deep ball type action. Some people get their deep ball power from the ground, a little extra juice from stiffening or popping off the ground on the left side. I know it's a trendy thing because A-Raj does it, but that's ground force. That's all it is. Everyone's a little bit different. All right, here's some common issues that, it goes into, I think, recruiting as well. Obviously, in the big sky, you can be a little bit more picky. But when we talk about recruiting, one, when I watch quarterbacks, I take the ball away from it and you just watch him and watch the violence in his body, and then watch the same play over and just watch the ball and watch what the ball does in relation to his body. And you're going to find out pretty quickly if he is a violent, twitchy player and the ball doesn't look violent and twitchy, chances are he lacks either range of motion or some stability at range of motion, right? Which, again, is, I believe, a little bit easier to fix only because you can do it in the off season in the weight room with your trainers. And, the NCAA rules, I'm not going to handcuff myself here, but they just get to spend more time with the trainers, right? And whether it's the athletic trainers or sports performance guys, I don't really care, but they can impact range of motion. So for us, when we get two players that we are recruiting, obviously, at Western, it was a little bit different. But when we recruited, we got two quarterbacks. Obviously, I just chose the one that mentally I thought I clicked with. because I know that the learning curve and the coaching curve, what I like to call it, when they're getting used to my style and I'm getting used to theirs, I know that it's a shorter curve, and I know that I can impact them quicker. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, how do you pick? They both can throw it. They're both athletic. They're both this. They're both that. I think football IQ is a separator, no question. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to learn pretty quickly how important throwing mechanics are to them. If it's not important to them, they've probably been good at it or just natural, right? Natural at it. At some point, they're going to lose that foundation. So I think it's about maintaining that foundation for some natural throwers of the football. And then some guys need drastic change, right? Drastic change. Okay, so we talk about some of the lower body issues, right? Oh, one more thing on quarterback play. This is not me preaching at all. I've been a firm believer in not recruiting a quarterback unless I've watched a couple full games. Highlight tape, again, gets you evaluated, no doubt about it. But you should be accurate in your highlight tape, right? Like, you should play with clean feet. You should make plays. So I like to watch the whole game. I like to watch plays. We'll clip it up and just watch plays. Again, I can't be as picky. I just kind of know. I want to know what I'm getting into. So it's not so much yes, no. It's just, okay, I got it. This is what we got to work on. But I want to see what you do after you get hit. Or let's go to the game you lost. All right, let's go to when you're down 40 and let's see who's in the game. Right? Because those type things I think are important to me. I think that's a lot of times you can find out a lot about somebody doing those things. Okay, going back to some of the issues again, ball, elbow, shoulder relationship. Okay, that is whether you're throwing the ball and you got a high elbow, okay, or let's say your posture is good. When you separate, that elbow gets above the shoulder. See, I can't even do it. My shoulder's so tight. But that elbow gets above the shoulder. If the elbow is above the shoulder before the ball is above the elbow, you're going to have shoulder problems. Okay, this is in football terms, layman terms. We talk about dropping the elbow. I'm not a believer in dropping the elbow because to me, the elbow should never be above the shoulder until it's climbing to release point, right? So if my elbow is low and it climbs that release point and it keeps climbing, that's fine. The elbow is climbing in the motion. But if I get the elbow high, there's only one way that elbow can go before it climbs. So you're putting a lot of stress, basically both ends of the spectrum. You're putting a lot of internal and external rotation on the shoulder when it doesn't need to be there. Again, we talk about eliminating movement. That's part of it, okay? Now, lower body, we see a lot of overstriders and oversliders, all right? Overstriders, I think, again, the offhand, these two things go together here now, but the oversliders are more common. I think a lot of it has to do with baseball, a little bit with pitching and literally the linear movement and going downhill, from an inclined surface, or sorry, declined surface, or however you want to look at it. But getting that out of them, I think is tough. I think the funny part about it is the sliders and striders. We address that issue by swinging baseball bats, right? And again, we talk about transfer learning. We try to swing golf clubs and baseball bats, left-handed and right-handed. And don't get me wrong, it is not pretty at times. But when you have baseball guys or ex-baseball players, a lot of that stuff will start to make sense to them because they can relate that to another thing that they learned maybe growing up or another feeling that they've had playing the sport at a high level in high school or whatever it may be. Okay, so we solved that issue there. There's some other drills and things that you can do, no doubt about it. But I like to solve those overslide issues without physically doing that movement, right? So I want it to organically happen, and swinging a baseball bat's one of them. You can't slide and swing a baseball bat, right? Because at that point you're just slapping it, which is again what you're doing in the throwing motion, right? You need to turn and rotate left. So baseball players will understand that feeling. Now their launch angle is a little bit different, but they'll understand that feeling. So now when they get to the football field, I don't need to do a drill that addresses overstriding or oversliding because now they just try to chase that feeling of swinging a baseball bat. Again, we talked about early back extension or early back leg extension and what it does to the shoulder and the stress it puts on them. Again, sometimes you got to do it. I understand that, but over a period of time, I think you isolate your shoulder and don't give or don't put your shoulder in the best position to be successful in terms of longevity. Okay, and then the slap and yank. Okay, so the offhand, talk about slap and yank. If I were to separate the throw right here, if I separate and my shoulders are now parallel to the sideline, and I get this action at separation, all I'm doing is slapping. So we call it slappers. And then now when we yank, we get it here, and we this is kind of old school, but we yank and pull the chain down, which all that does is tilt our shoulder plane. Right? This is the structure of the throw. This doesn't need to be yanked violently, okay? Because this affects the shoulder plane. Does it move? Yes, it moves, but it doesn't get yanked, okay? So those are a couple things that we address. Now here we go. Both these players are in the same phase. This is phase 2 entering phase 3. I want you to look at that. So his knees stacked on his left foot, his heels out of the ground, right? So I know it's like doing a bad lunge, right? When your knee gets in front of your stride foot, same idea, okay? So I now know where his weight is. He is sliding, not rotating, right? Center mass was started on this line right here. So look how far that number traveled in front of that line at the beginning of load phase. I'm sorry, at the beginning of acceleration phase, right? Obviously, my guy Teach Tape Beach right here does a really good job. We got the foot 45, the knees inside the foot, right? Neutral toes, right knees starting to move towards the point of reception. This is really good. Okay, we talk about coaching the movement all the time. Again, we install it like a play. We install it like a play so that, over the summer, like, you go out and see summer throwing and all that when, at these big time schools when they're throwing on their own and whatnot. And all you see is routes being ran and plays being ran. All right, guys warm up and then they get into 7-on-7 and make it competitive. So if they know plays that well to call it and run it on by themselves, or the coach is making a script for them, whatever the NCAA allows, okay, you have to install quarterback mechanics like that. So now when you install, off arm and the importance of off arm and stride foot, cool. Those two things go together. We're talking about off arm today. I break it up into 3 installs. Cool. Install 1's in. We're talking about off arm. I don't care what anything else. Off arm stride foot. That's it. So all the drills that we do addresses those two things. Now, I like to practice that way. But over the summer when they're on their own, they will have, that's how we install. Hey, today's the off arm day 1 of off season throwing. They're on their own. This is your drills, right? And this is what you do. Film it, get it on huddle so we can evaluate it or whatever it may be. So you can, self-correct or whatever it may be. So when we teach it, we try to teach and try to force them to visualize it. If they haven't done it before, it's tough because you have to visualize the feeling of it, right? To get it, right? I say when good golfers talk about the swing, they talk about feels, right? They talk about what it feels like. Now, we also, as coaches, I believe when you teach it, you show them kind of the concept, the why, hey, this is how we're going to accomplish this thing. So we got to show them some video evidence of it. So teach tape, right? But I think the one thing is the next step, other than the what and the why and the how, no question, those are important. But then hey, what does it feel like? Right. So remember those feelings. I think, we talk about, motor learning a little bit. But KP and KR feedback. So knowledge of results or knowledge of performance, right? Knowledge of performance is intrinsic. It's proprioceptive, right? It's something that you feel, and that's the feeling and the feedback that you give yourself. So the other day, like for example, the other day we went into 7-on-7. It was day 5 of install. We were 9 for 12 for 200 some odd yards. We had a couple explosive plays. All right, and Not one of those 9 completions, and everyone was pumping their own tires, like, we actually won a game. But none of those 1 completions did they play with proper feet or the right stride step. And I'm not talking about the distance, just the angle of the stride step. And that was the focus of the day, right? We're going to take proper drops with good body language, meaning we're not twitchy, we're calm, we're relaxed, and then proper stride foot. The rest of it, I don't care. That was the 2 goals today, and not one of them did it. We had 3 quarterbacks go, not one of them did it. Yet it's 9 to 12, 70 something, whatever the hell percent it is for 200 yards, right? And everyone's feeling good about themselves. But the process is messed up. So it's hard to accomplish that same goal because you don't know how to repeat it, right? Like, I'm just going out there and throwing it to the open guy. Great. But why? How are you doing it? Well, how you're doing it is terrible, right? The process. So again, that's just more of a mindset thing. But again, the reason why I say that is because this is all opportunities to earn confidence. Confidence is a muscle. I believe Jordan Palmer said it. One of these NFL guru guys, quarterback guru guys. But confidence is a muscle, and I believe it. I 100% believe it. As a player, when I was put in situations to earn confidence, I enjoyed those situations. Now, I think those opportunities, that's the value of this mechanical approach. Again, this is not the end all be all. This is not going to win you games, but I promise you it can lose you games. Because from a fundamental standpoint, I believe if the other team is fundamentally better than you, they will win. And at the quarterback position, right? So we're trying to build this fundamental, and I consider all of this stuff fundamentals. And so in 2018, our quarterback, we were going into that season a liability at that position. I knew we had a chance because he was just tougher than everybody else, and he was willing to put in more time than everybody else. So I knew this stuff eventually over a period of time, we will bankroll hours so that when we line up on Saturday, I just have more hours on X, Y, and Z than you do. But what this allowed him to do in 2019, I think all it did was give him the confidence. It allowed him to earn the confidence to throw the ball on 4th and 4. I think we were 83% at one point on 4th downs. I think we punted the least in the country because obviously we had good players. We had a hell of an O-line, but we had a quarterback that had the confidence to drop back and throw it. Right, and that's on him to earn that. Now, we have to, I believe, at this position, especially working on fundamentals, we have to find tangible improvement. Have to, right? And I'm a big believer in setting tangible goals. It's like saying, here at Willamette, hey, what's our goal? Well, it's to win the conference championship. Well, none of you guys have done it, so it's not tangible. You don't know what it feels like. You've never seen it done before. So that's a goal that you don't know that you're accomplishing. You don't know that you're getting closer to because you've never done it, right? So same thing with quarterbacks. We got to kind of refocus and reframe our goals. It has to be measurable. It has to be things that you can control in terms of mechanics, and it has to be things that show up on tape, right? And so for me, and so when we set these goals out, whether, hey, we're going to throw the ball, let's say we got 45 throws, I want 50% of them to have good stride foot. And we just literally sit there and watch it, just the stride foot, boom, 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 boom. And it just allows them to be consciously aware of it in practice. And then once they start to do it over a longer period of time, it's second nature. Now, we talk about transfer of learning. I think here's some things that you can watch with your guys, power hitters. The golf swing, I think, is very, very important in how they use the ground, right? Because it's, again, a static position, but the distance at which that they need to throw the distance that they're trying to hit the golf ball changes, right? So their body physically adjusts to the different tempos and swings and distances that they need. Same thing with the quarterback position, whether it's a field hitch, field fade, boundary comeback, my body acts differently. So that's why I think it's something good to watch. There's a ton of slow motion stuff on YouTube. Tennis, the serve and the forehand, again, is something, how they use the ground and how the lower half clears before the top half clears. Because in tennis, you need arm lag. You have to have it. If not, you don't have velocity and the ball doesn't come. I mean, you just need it. So that's a good sport to watch as well with your guys in some downtime. Now, some application and how we apply it. All right, so this is day one of spring ball for us. The kid on the left is kind of our starter right now. Again, mentally, he has all the tools. Mentally, he has all the tools, no doubt about it. We got to clean him up mechanically. So we got a stride drill here. This is our goal. But again, we don't have enough time. But over the summer, they'll be swinging baseball bats and things because he is a baseball guy. So you can see the separation in between the lower and upper body here. Boom, shoulders, left shoulder, left elbow is inside the stride foot. That's really good. Now ball comes out like we want it to. Boom. Pretty damn good right there by AK. Now, again, same thing with the towel drill. Again, we're just putting an object there that makes them consciously aware of their stride. You can see the difference here. The stride foot, 45, really good. Toe pointer, the knee is stacked on the toe. That right there, mechanically, right here, those hips are done. Right? There's nothing to it. The only chance you have of throwing this thing is to slide at it. That's it. You can see his knee in relation to his foot. Now the left knee ends up rotating onto the foot. Boom, that's the abrupt stop. That's the same drill. Okay, now when we break it down, now we start to worry more about the upper and lower kind of holistically here. So I'm not a believer in this when we have high level learners. I don't think you break down something that needs to be fluid and explosive. You would never break down a back squat for a senior, you know what I mean? Like a guy who's been doing it, right? But you would break it down for a beginner. And right now, all this stuff is new to these guys. So we got the left heel off the ground to overemphasize the feeling of getting the left heel in the ground, okay? And then making sure the left heel is, or the left foot's at a 45-degree angle. So here you go, boom, heel's in the ground. That's the feeling you want right there. That's what you want right there. We got palms facing the ground, 45 degrees, boom. Off arm, really good. That same drill here. Same drill here. You can see this kid, right? The lack of range of motion in the hips. Watch that right heel or left heel. I'm sorry. That left heel moves back to the quarterback. Watch the kid right here on the left. That left heel enters the ground a whole lot sooner. Boom. One's at a 45-degree angle and one's toe pointing. So again, that's a range of motion issue, right? We got some bad stuff here. That again, it's just to overemphasize the feeling of what your lower body and your knee should feel like. Because really, those two things are rotating against each other. They're rotating together, right? So we're going to help that and increase the feel of that. And this is a really good drill, I think, to address some bad habits. But 45, that's really good right there. Now the right knee starts to rotate. Boom, that's it. So again, that's more of the same here. Some two ball stuff. I want to get to some footage or some game tape, so I'm going to fly through this here. I got what, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. So again, we're just breaking it down again with two balls. It's just to make them conscious of where their offhand's at. Okay, now this is day one. So we installed these mechanics. They're pretty damn good for day one. And then I freaking threw a wrinkle in it and made them move and had them then react to throw. So you can see here, boom, it's really good. Strike foot's at a 45. The issue now is he just leans into this throw, right? You can see the chin go up to the sky, and he just leans into this throw. There's nothing coming off that back leg, right? There's no force coming off that back leg. It's just dead. So this is not something that I expected them to be good at right away, but this is a good way for them to have reactionary feet. That's pretty damn good right there. You can see that way more juice coming off the ground. That's really good. This is another drill that we did. This is just to get them the feeling of using that right ass cheek versus the right quad. We want to use the bigger muscles and try to be a little bit more powerful. In order to do that, my foot has to be dug into the ground. So velocity right here should never be better. Okay, now we'll get into some hip flip stuff. Again, this is at Western Oregon. I believe the summer going into the 2019 season, but we are trying to work just from a base standpoint. You can see him here, 45, rotated, right kneecap at the target, rotating against the left hip, right? Where this is an RPO type drill, hip flip, you're reacting to it and throwing. 2 hip flips. Maintain the base through the RPO game. I think that's the biggest flaw in some of the RPO stuff is quarterbacks' bases get messed up. But maintain the base. Keep the left side closed. He does a really good job here with the off arm. Boom. So now when we get to the game, again, we don't really need to do an RPO drill necessarily because we've thrown slant and we've done hip flip, right? So he gets here, it's hip flip and rip. Boom. Hip flip, rip. It's another example of it here. Again, this is all about boom. Now foot's at a 45. Right knee goes towards the target. This is an all-arm throw. I don't need to take a stride here necessarily. So get the feet in the ground. Left arm matches your right arm in terms of arm angle. Really good shoulder plane. This is another just drill that we do to break down the throwing motion in a low impact, low intensity drill. Stride, rotate, ball. That's not a very heavy football or heavy med ball. So again, we're throwing the field dig right here. Got away with a little pick. Got away with one right there. But again, allowing the quarterback to dig into those heels and rip. Really good shoulder plane right here. Off arm, throwing arm matches each other. We do a bunch of negative throws, trying to absorb the weight in the right side to throw. It needs to be violent, and we want to catch the weight, absorb it, and use it. Right? This is a good angle here. Catch, absorb, get into that side, and use it. Most guys, when they do this drill, that right leg will stiffen. Because when you change directions, no one absorbs the weight like this. Because the foot's in the ground, it's stabbing and it's extending because we need to go the other direction. So absorbing the weight to be more powerful. This is something I got actually from our strength coach. We were doing some overspeed running, and I was like, "Well, shit, man, maybe the overspeed throwing thing's good." We dove into it, and we obviously we can't do a ton of it, but I watch his left foot here. You see how it stiffens, so he cannot handle the force that he's been given by the band here. He's not used to this force. All we're doing right here is putting stress on that shoulder. How much whip and arm leg can you handle? Right? Because this right here should be the hardest he can ever throw the football. So let's see, and let's try to make that arm essentially put more tension and intensity in that right arm, and let's see how he handles it. Just a couple clips right here of some of the guys in the league. Obviously, this was Goff before Detroit, but we just want to talk about the stride foot right here. See how far that left knee is inside the stride foot? That is using the ground right there, which allows him to delay the right side. Right? This is really good right here. It's effortless. Boom. He has a little bit different type of motion than Baker does. Reason why I love Baker, one, I think he plays with an edge, and I think it's much watched TV. But I also think for being an undersized quarterback, he doesn't have very long arms, doesn't have very long legs. So physically, the deck is stacked against him. So he has to be efficient and use everything in his body to make these throws at this level. So watch his left knee. See how much flexion's in that left leg, right? He's using the ground, palms at the ground here. Now watch the right knee. Fire. Boom. That's just how he has to throw. Now he has some head yank. No doubt. But he needs that in order to get this ball off. Right? He needs that in order to get this ball off. So boom, foot 45, strong, firm base. And again, in this picture right here, Baker, let's say, is 6 foot, maybe. let's say 6 foot. He's playing at maybe 5'9" with his base and his width, right? So if guys want to get into this, well, the balls are getting batted down. Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson should lead the league in batted balls every year, and they don't, right? So it's one of those things where, yeah, no doubt you need an O-line, blah, blah, blah. I get 100%. But if you can play strong and firm and get the ball out on time, batted balls shouldn't be an issue. Now, Dak, who's much bigger, much stronger, gets away with a lot in his lower body. So you can see here, he can do these things where he can keep his feet down the hash to hold the near safety and throw essentially a boundary seam. So he can keep his feet and shoulders there to hold the boundary safety and still put enough juice on it to get it there. Now, again, safeties nowadays can't hit anybody, right? So they will play the football, which you can get a little bit more greedy, I think, on where you put footballs, right? So you got to take advantage of that. Now, mechanically, Dak here gets away with a lot. I don't know if you can tell, but we got a duck foot situation right here, right? So watch his right leg extend, right? So at that point right there, there's zero rotation in anything. That force gets killed in that hip, which now puts a lot of stress on that shoulder. Now, I'm not gonna play doctor here and tell you Dak's fucking shoulder problems are from, this training camp are from the mechanical things, but I do know that I've had players that have similar body language when they throw, and they've had very similar shoulder problems. So that's kind of what our guys deal with, and don't get me wrong, he's really strong and talented. Obviously, he has some God-given ability, but you can see here. This is a little better angle here, but the right leg extending, left leg extending, toe pointing. But again, he's strong, physical, and gets away with a lot. So, stop sharing. Anyway, that's it. I just kind of want to share that. Big thing is, again, there's no one right way to do it. Everyone's a little bit different. I think genetically you can get away with, some people can get away with more than others. I think that goes with different levels of football too, whether you're in the Big Sky, in the Pac-12. I think you can mechanically always get better, but I think some guys have less, get better, quote, quote, to do. So I appreciate you guys having me, man. Is there anything else?
You did a great job, man. I really appreciate you coming on here and stuff. Pat, anything you got for him?
You're the man as always, Trey. What's the best way for people to reach out to you who have questions after watching this?
Shoot, probably my email, Twitter. What is my Twitter? I think it's just at Trey Shima.
Trey Shima, I believe.
Yeah. TreyShima.
Right.
Twitter's cool. Cool. Is this stuff going to be released on Twitter or just on the network?
Yeah, it'll be up on the network, and then we'll put clips out on Twitter tomorrow, probably.
Cool. Yeah, so Twitter, and then my email is my last name. So Trey Shimabukuro at Willamette.edu.
Cool. Awesome. Cool.
Yep.
Appreciate you. Awesome. Great stuff as always.